Started from the bottom, all I had was a dream. Always been alone, never really had a team. Cause the loyalty is suspect, nothing's what it seems. As I'm counting all this money, thinking how to make it clean. Never been broke, see I always had a job. And before I learned to hustle, I was taught how to rob. Nice with the hands, but I'm iller with the shot. Battling depression cause it's lonely at the top. Drinking all this Henny just to try and ease the pain. Though I never had regrets, there's some things that I wouldn't do the same. I would never change for some change, and I never let the sneak distance take me out my game. I'm a grown man. Unless it's for my kids, I don't hold hands. Cause they hate it when you focused on your own plans. So I gamble with my money, I don't gamble with my life in the street. Cause you only get one bottle of that Henny and I mix it with some Red Bull. Got a couple pills that I'm popping for the pain.
What's going on? My name is Marcus Whitley, and yes, this is Good Behavior. Now, this is another work release episode where I get to travel outside of the studio and interview different guests. Now, today I have a special guest with me who was also an ex-felon like I was. You want to introduce yourself to the viewers and let them know who you are?
How you doing, everybody? My name is Hamzah I served about 18 and a half, 19 years for a crime I didn't commit. I've been home since 2009. I went to jail in 1990 and came home in 2009. So
Wow.
Since then, I've been out here working with the youth in the community, trying to do what I do.
Wow, that's real good, the way you're able to turn it around like that and be able to help out the youth.
Indeed. When I went to jail, when I caught my case, I was 17 years old. I went upstate at 18, so I was one of the youngest guys in Walpole at the time, where Walpole had more crimes, more rapes, more murders than Springfield, Boston, and Worcester mixed together. So
Yeah.
It was an experience, but I had real OGs, like real guys that didn't let me get caught up, you know what I mean? And they knew I didn't belong there, so they helped me get out.
Yeah. That was one of the things the experiences that I've had being incarcerated was, even though it was a bad place, a bad situation, I met a lot of good people in there who did look out, like the OGs who made sure that you didn't get caught up in certain stuff that you shouldn't have been a part of. So, like, I do feel you on that part. Like, that's huge to have, like, positive role models, like, no matter where you are.
Yeah, because, like, for me, I remember being locked up and telling my father, who was there, he was like, "Oh, stay away from them guys. Them guys is menaces to society." But I seen a totally different outlook from them. You know what I mean? Them guys really helped me out a lot. You know what I mean? So, but it was a scary time. But I ended up adapting and was able to do the things I needed to do to help get out of there. You know what I'm saying? So. It was probably the best thing ever happened to me, going to prison. I know that sounds crazy, but I was really on a crash course when I was out here. You know what I mean? I was smoking crack at 14. You know what I mean? Smoking woos, and got caught up in that for about a year and a half or so. Then I got shipped down south, got clean, came back, and I caught my case probably like 3 months later. You know what I mean? So I've been through some stuff. You know what I mean? I can't remember a time being sober from the time I was 11 to the time I went to penitentiary.
Wow.
You know what I mean? So, and at this time, the Jamaicans was running the city, and I wasn't paying nobody. You give me a package, see me when you see me. You know what I mean? So, So I was doing a lot of stuff that was way out of the league of how I was brought up. Because I wasn't a kid that was really from the streets. I was a kid that went to the streets trying to front like he was from the streets.
And then got caught up.
And got caught off. Yeah. So.
Yeah, that must have been rough, being addicted at that young of an age. Now, when you went down south and got cleaned up and came back, were you able to stay clean when you came back?
Yeah.
Even though you caught your case, but did you kick the addiction?
Yeah. I kicked the addiction. Well, actually, I kind of kicked the addiction before I went down south, because a friend of mine was having a kid and he was like, "Yo, let's quit." So we quit because he was having a kid. You know what I mean? But, I was still like dibbling, dabbling, still smoking weed and drinking and popping pills and sniffing coke and stuff like that. But when I got into the beef with the Jamaicans, my father sent me down south. And when I went down south, I was on a farm.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So I ain't know nobody. I ain't know where to go. You know what I mean? And so when I went down there, it was all like, just get away. Cause I was the kind of kid who, as long as I didn't get high, I was good. But if I got high, I'm chasing all day long. You know what I mean? So I was somebody that had enough strength to be able to quit, because nobody knew I was getting high unless you was getting high with me. You know what I mean? I still had my jewelry. I still was hustling. I was still doing what I do, you know. But everybody don't have that strength to be able to just say, you know what, I'm all set. I'm not doing that no more. You know what I'm saying?
And I mean, not only be able to have that strength, but at a young age, be able to have that strength. Like, I can only imagine how hard, how much harder that is.
And that's why, like, when I see young kids out there, because if you go around Springfield, like, you see there's young kids out there strung out.
Yeah.
You know, and it's like, dang. And I'm looking at them now as a 54-year-old, like, dang, they babies. What are they doing out here? But my era, all of us was little kids out here doing that. When crack hit Springfield at 84, like, everybody was experimenting on this thing. You know what I mean? You either got money off it or you got high off of it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So, you know, I started getting the money late, but, you know, I had a short run.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I mean, it's better you had a short run than what it could have been. And that's huge, because some people aren't able to kick it.
Yeah.
That just messes up their whole life. Yeah.
When I say I had a short run, I mean, you know, I really came off the porch at like 13, 14 and was in prison by 17. You know what I mean? So it was short-lived, 3-4 year run. You know what I mean? But like I said, I think that was the best thing that ever happened to me, because, you know,
over there, man.
I grew up with just my two sisters, you know what I mean, and my mom. You feel me? I didn't have no man figure. So, you know, my mother and father broke up, so I didn't grow up with my pop. So I was out in them streets looking for that father figure, you know, and, you know, I found Prince.
So what was it like for you getting incarcerated at such a young age?
So it's kind of like surreal. Like, it's like, this ain't really happening to me. Like, stuff like this don't happen to people like me, because I was so used to anything I got into, my mother came and got me out that trouble. Yeah. Right. But on this occasion, she couldn't get me out this trouble. You know what I mean? And I know that affected her, you know. But it was a scary moment once I got locked up, you know, because I got locked up in York Street. You know what I mean? This is before Ludlow. This is when it was down there on York Street by West Columbus. You know, where you see all the car dealerships at now. Yeah. That was pretty much York Street. And when I first went there, it was like, whoa, like, what the heck I done got myself into, you know, because I went from court to York Street, and York Street was wild. You know, when you go to the shower is open just like this room. They got a bunch of spigots and there's a bunch of naked dudes in there. Like, you know, it ain't no stalls. You got your own stalls. So it's like, oh, no, this is crazy, you know. But I've always been blessed. You know, my family's are Christians. You know what I mean? I know from their prayers it protected me, because everywhere I went, I knew somebody. Yes. You know what I mean? So when I got to York Street, there was a few dudes that I knew that was there, older than me. You know what I mean? And they made sure I was good. You know. But when I went upstate, it was a whole different ball game. You know, because when you come in, you got the shackles. They got the door that opens up. And a dude is up top with a shotgun down there staring at you. You know what I mean? And then all you can think of is prison movies you done seen. And, you know, oh my God, this dude is going to try to do something to me. I ain't going to never get out here because I ain't going to let nobody do nothing to me. I'm going to kill him. And, you know, so it was a lot of stuff going through my brain until I got to the unit that I was going to be in. When I got to the unit I was being, it was a unit full of kids. Yeah. You know, so. But it was just scary. It was, you know, keeping it real. It was scary, but I couldn't show my feelings. Right. I couldn't show nobody that I was scared, but I was scared to death.
Now, did you see a difference between the unit that you were in with kids as opposed to a unit with adults? Like, how? Definitely. How were kids living?
So the thing is, when I first went there, they took me to this unit called A unit. Right. That's the unit that when you get in trouble, you go to this unit before you go to DSU. DSU was, for instance, if you caught a case, they would put you in DSU. That was like jail inside of a jail. Yeah. Right. So I went to the A block and it was crazy, loud, trash everywhere. You know, it was just crazy. And I feel like now that I think about it, I felt like they put me in these units on purpose, right? To scare me or whatever they was trying to do. But they put me there, and then they put me in the hospital. And when they put me in the hospital, blood was everywhere. Somebody had cut up, so blood was everywhere. So I was like, yo, this is crazy. This is what prison gonna be for me for the rest of my life. And then when I got to that unit, the youngest kid was 18 and the oldest kid was probably 23. You know what I mean? They had maybe 2 or 3 older dudes there, but it was just a block full of young kids, you know? And then when I got out and I was able to go like the chow and stuff like that, there was young kids everywhere because Boston had the murder rate. So a lot of these kids was even doing seconds or first. Wow. You know what I mean? And Boston was deep and there wasn't really no dudes from Springfield there, you know? So it was like, okay, like what's going to happen? You know what I mean? And as I'm walking, going to the chow hall, who I meet, I've run into one of my mans that's older cat that I knew from the neighborhood. You know what I mean? So like I said, every time I ran into somebody that I knew, you know what I mean? And they was able to guide me in the right direction. But the kids was off the chain. We were in trouble all day, every day, fighting because Boston, you know, at this time, they didn't like each other. So they rather beef with each other, you know, so it was always something. And, you know, if you hanging with me and I got beef with him, that becomes your beef, you know? So that was my experience. And that's how I got into my first fight in the penitentiary, from being with some dudes that had beef with these dudes.
Yeah, no, that's a scary place. And like, you never know, like even like I had a situation where this kid wasn't hanging out with somebody else, but he was just walking with him, and the kid was going. These people were going to jump this kid, and the other kid got caught up with it just because he was with him. And I mean, some situations like
because like when I went to the penitentiary, you know, there was rules. You know what I mean? Like you walk by somebody's cell, you don't look in their cell. You feel me? Like, you know, in Walpole, it's assigned seats at the table. You feel me? So if you don't got a seat, you got to stand up and eat, you know? And there was a lot of dudes standing up eating, you know what I mean? I had a seat at the table, but you know, if you come and you sit in somebody else's seat, that's drama. If one person at the table gets into a beef, the whole table beefs, you know? So it was a lot to learn for an 18-year-old kid who's green, who knows nothing about this lifestyle.
Right.
You know what I mean? So it was a lot. It was a lot, you know, but a lot of my friends' parents was there. Their fathers was there, you know. So they looked out for me.
Yeah, I know when I went in there and I walked into Walpole for the first time, I didn't know how it was gonna be. When we went into the chow, like at least when I was there, it wasn't assigned seats, but it was assigned by cities. So I was able to just go over to the Springfield table and knew a few people, but it was just different to see like the let's call it segregation. And yeah, if you sat at the wrong table, it was a wrap.
Yeah. So when I went to prison, there was one Puerto Rican table. Now there's multiple Spanish tables, right? And there was one Springfield table, right? The rest was Boston, South Boston, Charlestown. You know what I mean? Like they was all, and there was like, this is your seat. Like, no, you know what I mean, bouncing around at the table. Like, if you didn't come to chow, nobody sat in your seat. You know what I mean? So it was different. And, you know, and a lot of beefs happened out of there. I got into a beef because I overturned my case and got out. So when I came back, there was 3 people sitting at the table. And when we sat at the table, you know, we bouncing around because there's nobody at the table. And I'm sitting in somebody's seat, and he got mad that I was sitting in the seat. You know what I mean? So, you know, and he still holds a grudge against me today.
Wow.
You know what I mean? For what happened then. You know what I'm saying? So, but, you know, it is what it is, man. It was an experience, man, you know. I stayed there for about 2 years before they let me go to lower security. And it was really lower security because they sent me all the way to Old Colony in Bridgewater. You know, and that's 2.5 hours away from the house.
Yeah. That's another scary thing. Aside
Yeah.
just from being in prison and in the wall and in the bars,
Mm-hmm.
just being so far from home and knowing that you can't go home.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But like for me, I work with the kids,
Okay.
and I try to tell them every day, I'm like, because they think they're invincible.
Yeah.
They have no consequences. And I try to let them know, like, if you get locked up, there's nobody that can save you.
Yeah.
Your mom can't come and get you.
Mm-hmm.
You can't have your PO
Mm-hmm.
come and
Mm-hmm.
try to give you a deal. Like,
Mm-hmm.
you're gone. Every day when you wake up, you're still there.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, it's sad, but some of them just they don't take it serious.
Yeah. Yeah, I work with that population. I currently go to DYS. I go all over Massachusetts teaching life skills to the kids. And I always start off with my story about how I was locked up, and my little story that I have, and I explain to the kids, like, prison ain't DYS.
Mm.
It's nothing. You're not going to jump on staff and get a snack.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So I try to explain to them that just because you came to jail don't mean you got to keep coming to jail, and this is real, because this is where you're going. If you don't make the changes you need to make, you got two options: death or penitentiary.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to have to make a choice, and it's going to be hard choices, because you're going to come home and your man's is still beefing. So you're going to have to make a choice. You're going to be sitting at home chilling with your family, and your friends is going to say, come on, we got beef, and you're going to leave either being loyal to maybe not return.
Right.
So you got to make some hard decisions, because right now your brain's not fully developed and you think you can do whatever and you're invincible and you got a bit in you.
Mm-hmm.
Don't grow old in there like I did. I got out when I was 37 years old. So
Now, for you, going in at a young age like that and doing all that time, throughout the course of your bid, like, did you ever think you were gonna come home?
I never thought I was going to come home. I was doing a natural life sentence. Right. I was sentenced to a natural life sentence. All of the guys that was with me wrote statements on me or testified against me and put it on me. And my victim was a college kid. He was a Caucasian college kid, and his family had money, and when I was upstate, there was people that was connected to him that worked in the jails that I was in. So it got to a point, like my first 3 years, I flipped my case.
Mm.
And when I flipped my case, I got bailed out, and I had to go back to trial. Then they found me of a lesser sentence.
Mm.
Right. You know what I mean? And I didn't do it, but they didn't want to hear that. When I went to court, judge is white, jury's white, lawyers is white, everything in the courtroom is white, but me. You know what I mean? And then in this time, when I first caught my case, Matty Ryan was running Springfield. He was the DA. And you wasn't beating no cases. You feel me? We was getting smoked. We didn't even have black people to pick from. When I picked my jury, I had one black person and one Spanish person, right? And they were both either excluded or excluded themselves. You know what I mean? So, like it was a different time. You feel what I'm saying? And so when I went back and all my appeals was denied, it was like, yo, I ain't gonna never get out of this place. You know what I mean? So I had to figure out just, everybody say, oh, how did you do it? I ain't have a choice.
Right.
You know what I mean? I had to buckle down. I couldn't let my mother see me stressing. I couldn't let my sister see me stressing. I couldn't let nobody see me stressing. And I couldn't show my feelings, because you're in the penitentiary. If you crying and acting weak, they're going to treat you like you weak.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? So it was a lot of suppressing feelings. You know what I mean? And there was drugs, there was alcohol. Like I was still getting high. I was still drinking. You know what I mean? Like I mean, all of the time. You know what I mean? So I didn't have to deal with my reality.
Mm.
You feel what I'm saying? But then when it got to a point where I changed my life around, I won't get high no more. Now it's like you really got to deal with this.
Right.
You know what I mean? And I became comfortable being in prison because that's all I knew. And I know everything about a penitentiary. I know everything about every camp, like, so it no longer became hard for me after I just got used to and kind of like adapt to that situation. You know what I mean? And kind of pretty much became the old head.
Yeah. Now, being in there, at what point did you decide, like, all right, something's got to change. I don't want to get high no more. I want to get right. I want to get out of here. I want to.
So honestly, so my mother and father married when they were young, had my sisters, and my father had kids outside of the relationship. You know what I mean? So I never knew because my mother took us and moved us to West Virginia. So when I came back to Massachusetts, I found out my father had other children. You know what I mean? So I found out I had a brother. You know what I mean? Me and my brother Tim was close. And my brother Tim died while I was in prison because he needed a kidney. You know what I mean? And he got to the point where he was just tired. You know what I mean? Like I was like, yo, like we can see if I'm a match, and you know what I mean? I'll give you my kidney. And he pretty much was like he was just like tired. You know what I mean? But I was still trying to, give him my kidney and all that stuff. And he ended up passing away.
Yeah, I'm sorry to hear that.
And that affected me. And that's where my turn began. 1997. That's when my turn began. And I began to do programs, no longer to go and hang out with my friends, right? To try to get something out of it. Because I asked God, my prayer to God was just make me a better person. Whether I'm in prison or outside of prison, just allow me to become a better person. Because I realized the things that I was doing was hurting the people that actually really cared about me. You know what I mean? And that's when I started taking responsibility. And I started, instead of blaming everybody for why I was in prison, I started focusing on what did I do to get me here? You know what I mean? So that's really where my change began at. And then I began to, do programs like House of Healing and, things like that. And, I called my father because my issue was with my dad. And I called my father on the phone. I told him I needed him to come visit me. So he came to visit me, and I needed to hear his side of the story, what happened between him and my mother, because I only had my mother's side of the story.
Right.
So once my father told me his side of the story and he didn't bash my mother, I was like, yeah, I love this dude. Like, you know what I mean? And my whole life just changed once I found my truth, you know what I mean? And I started building that relationship with my father. And no longer had this hatred toward my father, or this anger toward my father, and dislike towards my siblings. My life began to get better. You know what I mean? And then, I got into the religion and, you know what I mean? I got myself together. I started running programs, creating programs. And, that's when it made a whole 360. But the core of it was my brother dying.
Okay. So what was it like for you when you found out that you were about to be released now and you got a second chance at life?
Yo, it was crazy because so I can never go to a minimum because I'm doing a life sentence. So they had this program because I hung out with all the old heads. You know what I mean? Because I got tired of getting in trouble with the young, so I hung out with the old. And the old head, God bless his soul, man. My man Jerry Funderburg, he told me, he said, go to the cadre, they're gonna let you out. Because I went to parole in 2005, they denied me. They gave me a 3-year setback. They said I was arrogant and I didn't take responsibility because I wouldn't say I did the crime, right? So I ended up going to the cadre, and it's in Bridgewater State Hospital. So all of us go there to work because the place is full of patients. So they can't do none of the work. So all of the inmates, is 30 of us, and we do all of the work there. I mean, the blood pickup, the cleaning the gyms, the floors, I was the barber, So after I seen parole there, the parole officer came to the barbershop. I'm in the middle of cutting hair, and he's knocking at the door, so I let him in. And he was like, can we talk? And I was like, yeah, what's up? He was like, you want me to talk in front of this guy? And I was like, is it bad news? He said, I didn't say that. I said, well, you can talk, And he's like, well, you've been paroled. And I was
Wow.
like, what? I was like, stop playing. He was like, yeah, you've been paroled. Your release date is February 20th, but you got to find a program, you know? Because when I went to the parole board, they wanted to parole me to the streets. After 18, 19 years in jail, they wanted to send me straight to the streets. And I was like, no, I need to go to a program because I ain't never been on the streets. I don't know nothing about, I'm 37 years old now. Like, what I know about being on the streets. So I ended up going to a program in Worcester called the Salvation Army.
Okay.
Best thing I ever did, you know. But I was like, I couldn't sleep. I was like, my mind was racing. I couldn't wait to go back. I think I might have shut the barbershop down early that day. Went back calling like, yo, I got parole, I got parole, I got parole, you know, because it was really like, you don't get parole when you say you didn't do it.
Yeah.
It's automatic denial of responsibility. But they all voted for me to get out, you know, because they looked at the case. They could see that I didn't commit the crime. You know what I'm saying? That's why they let me out, you know, because years later, I went back in and had my parole terminated. You feel me? So,
Wow.
you know what I mean? So I was on lifetime parole for 15 years.
Mm.
And my parole officer said, you know, I'm going to put you in to have your parole terminate, put some letters together. So I put the letters together and everything. I went to the hearing, you know, and I'm talking to them at the hearing, and they're really like focused on all the stuff that I've done. The first dude asked me what happened in my case. I told him everything that happened, you know what I mean, to the best of my knowledge, because my story don't change. When you didn't do it, your story don't change, you know, and I think that impressed him that my story has been the same from 1989 all the way up to today. And they ended up terminating my parole after being on parole for 15 years. You know what I mean? And that's because the parole board knows I didn't do it, but they can't retry my case. You know what I'm saying? So so I got the parole. I'm ecstatic, you know, but I'm still doing programs. You know, I didn't just get comfortable like, okay, I got parole now. I'm still doing everything, working on myself, bettering myself, doing everything I could possibly do. I went to the Salvation Army in Worcester, started working there, you know what I mean? You know, doing things in the community, trying to find a job out there. It was hard to find a job out there. That's how I ended up back in Springfield, because it was just hard, because I thought I was going to come home with this barber's license and making millions of dollars, you know, but no one tells you about how you got to work and build your clientele, you know? And then I realized that I didn't want people's hair all over me all day long. You know what I mean? So I ended up trying to do something different. You know, I ended up selling cars and all kinds of stuff before I landed on what I'm good at, is working with kids.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, being in there, because I know they offer a lot of programs.
Mhm.
Were you able to get your barber's license while you were incarcerated?
Yep.
Oh, nice.
I got my barber's license while I was incarcerated. I got my chef license while I was incarcerated. Like I did a little bit of college when I was in prison. Like everything that I know about being responsible, I learned in prison. I learned how to put medicine in glasses. Like, you know, I pressed license plates. I did everything under the sun. My first job was in prison, you know, and I worked my whole bit. I worked. When I didn't have a job, I felt like something ain't right. You know what I mean? So everything I learned, man, like how to cook, how to clean, how to make my bed, how to iron, everything I learned in prison. I was a child. I grew up in prison. You know what I mean? So, you know, that's why I always say, like, it's the best thing that ever happened to me, man. Because if I didn't run into those older dudes that were like father figures to me, who knows where I would have been? I probably would have been dead or really doing a life sentence. You know what I'm saying? So, you know, so I thank all those guys. But the main thing is, my story is not really about me. It's really about all the things God's done for me, because I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for God.
Right.
The stuff that I've been through, the stuff that I've seen being in prison, like, and it never, none of that stuff ever affected me. I got out of prison and I'm not institutionalized. You know what I mean? Most guys are institutionalized. They back in 6 months. I've been home 17 years. You know what I mean? So it's, you know, it can really be rough, because, you know, I was bitter for a long time, man.
Mm-hmm.
I was
That'll happen.
bitter. I was bitter for a long, long time, man, you know. And now, like those guys that did me wrong, I don't even hold no grudges against them.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Because I'm all right.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like my life is okay, but there's people that's still affected by this situation. Like we have, like a lot of people don't even mention the victim's family of what they may be going through because I'm free now.
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying? Like they got nobody in jail for their child. You feel me? So they're going through it. And you know, so all my successes is bittersweet because, you know, I have remorse for people now. You know what I mean? And I feel for them. You feel me? You know, and my family was victimized.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? My mother and father was stripped of their son, their only son together. You know what I'm saying? So, you know, and every time this case comes up, my father's name comes up because I was a junior before I changed my name. You know what I mean? So there's a lot of stuff that I do with, you know, like feeling like I have this responsibility on my back. You know what I mean? You know, and in this community as well. This community, Dora Robinson, Miss Norma Baker, you know what I mean? Henry Thomas III, Andrew Cade, all them people came and they helped me. Ben Swan, you know, Ray Jordan, like all those people like put their neck on the line for me to help me when I was on bail.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? I don't think I would have got bail if it wasn't for them. My auntie Hazel and Narvis putting up the house for me, not once but twice. You know what I mean? Like to give me an opportunity to be outside and be home and be with my family. You know, so you know, I owe a lot of people, you know, all those great men that I left in prison that helped groom me into the man that I am today. You know what I mean? Like I owe a lot to these people, you know what I mean? And this is why the work that I do is personal for me. It's not a job. You know what I mean? Like this is just my calling. Like it's my job to give back. I believe that I went through all that stuff so that I can do the work that I'm doing.
Right.
You know what I mean? So
I feel the same way about that.
yeah.
Now, with everything that you're doing and in the direction that you're heading in, like where do you see yourself in the next 5 to 10 years?
So in the next 5 to 10 years, I plan to have houses all over the country with guys coming home from jail. You know, I created a program called Redemption After Incarceration.
Okay.
You know, and I'm focused on giving guys a safe space so that they can come home, not going back to their neighborhoods, being able to come out, don't have to go back to their hood, and they'll be able to feel safe enough to be able to learn the things that they need to learn. Mental health, substance abuse, trauma, you know what I mean? Reuniting with your family, you know what I mean? Because, you know, a lot of times you go to jail, you have bad relationships with your girl, you don't get to see your kids, you know. But my main thing is generational wealth, right? Because it's very important that we be able to leave our kids something so our kids don't have to go through the things that we went through. Because there's a whole generation lost from the crack epidemic. You know what I mean? And this is what we're seeing today, right? But there's a lot of people coming home from prison who never thought they was going to come home from prison, right? Who can't function out here, right? And a lot of people say they're here to help them, but there's no help. When I came home, people said they was going to help. Nobody helped. You know what I mean? But I was able to figure it out.
Right.
You know what I mean? So I want to supply because I know what they need. So I want to supply that thing that they need to make their transition easier. Because the first thing that we do to people that come home from prison is we make them jump through every type of hoop possible to get some help. You know what I mean? And these people got families, they got children, they got responsibilities. And there's nobody there. It's like I'm putting you on trial all over again just to give you some help. And you know, and most guys either go back to jail or they go back to what they know. You know, so that's why I created it, because there is redemption. Redemption is possible.
I mean,
You
that
know,
something like that is huge too, because being in that safe space, they'll be able to grow without having to look over their shoulder. And now they can really like find and understand who they really are, what they want to do, and that's the best possible chance for them to be successful. So that's huge.
and my goal is to collaborate with all of the programs in the city, right? You know, because a lot of people have their own programs, but I'm trying to create a space where people feel comfortable enough to work with each other. Because as you can see in the city, no one wants to work with each other because of the things that they've been through, you know, and I want to try to bring that together, because we can't do everything by ourselves. I might specialize in people coming home from jail. You might specialize in mental health. He might specialize in substance abuse. He might specialize in job training, right? We all need to come together and link together so that we can give these guys what they need, because most times nobody cares about these guys until it hits home.
Right.
You know what I mean? So that's what I'm trying to do, you know. I just want to bring the city back to how it was when I was growing up here, because it wasn't like it is now in the 80s. It was different. We had love for each other. We looked out for each other. All of our parents knew each other. You know what I mean? Like, it was just it was different, and we weren't burying our children. Now we're burying our children, and we're not built to bury our children.
No.
You know, so the whole thing with my program is that, you know, I'm staying in my lane. I'm not stepping on nobody else's toes to get where I want to get to. I'm staying right in my lane, and I'm helping everybody, because everyone that comes through my program, I'm teaching them how to create their own program. Every person that I help get a job, I'm not teaching them just how to work. I'm teaching them how to keep a job, and the end result being owning your own company. You know what I mean? Because it's important that you be a boss. You don't always have to be a worker, right? Some people can't work for people. And if you know that about yourself, you need to be an entrepreneur.
Right.
You know what I mean? So it's about giving people what they need. And this is why we do the assessment when they first come into the program, about the things and what their goals are, and help them to achieve those goals, you know. And as you can see, the city is split up. So you can't have a program in a certain place, because all of the kids can't go to that place.
Right.
Right. So what you're going to do, you got to try to find somewhere that's going to be, you know, neutral, but it's really hard in the city. You know what I mean? So that's what I've done, because this is what was done to me when I was in prison. And this is how I look at my life. Like, when I went into prison, there was guys that guided me to certain programs to work on certain things. When I went to prison, I was reading at a 5th grade level. These guys started giving me books to read. At first, they was giving me books they knew I liked to read, gang books.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Something that was going to intrigue me, right? So I'll read more. And then they started, you know, giving me other books and stuff like that. But I always had to do book reports to show what I read. Did I understand what I was reading? And this is what helped me to be able to be reading at a college level when I was getting my GED and things of that nature. But if it wasn't for those guys being in that small community, you know what I mean, slowing me down, teaching me, getting me to go to programs, changes my way of thinking about my, you know, my behavior change and things of that nature, I wouldn't be able to do the things that I'm doing or be where I'm at today. Right. So I'm just really just giving back. It's just on a bigger stage because we're out here in the society,
Right.
you know what I mean? And we can reach more people, you know, so.
You know, that's huge, man. I know that's going to be able to help a lot of people.
And give people jobs.
Yeah.
You know, because a lot of people are coming home from prison. They got families to take care of.
Right.
They can't work for $15 an hour. You know, so it'll be able to give guys some jobs. It'll keep guys reminded that they're only one bad decision away before they can go back to jail. Because it just takes one decision. right? And they can take care of their families, man.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? So, and it's going to help out with the economy in Massachusetts. You
Yeah, that
know,
too.
it's gonna help out. You know, so that's what I'm trying to do, man. And you know, I'm trying to bring people together and not separate people,
Mm-hmm.
because the city's already separated. You know, and I'm hoping that once I'm on the scene, I can start bringing people together, because I kind of got a good relationship with a lot of people.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm hoping that relationship can bring people together and get people to start talking that don't normally talk to each other, dislike each other for things that happened 20 years ago,
Mm-hmm.
and try to get people to see the bigger picture,
Yeah.
so.
I mean, that's important. But like changing somebody's mindset
Mhm.
and getting them to let go of grudges that aren't even that serious.
Mhm.
Like we need that because
Yeah.
it's bad out here today.
Yeah. Yeah. Because like I said in the beginning, I was falsely accused of crime that I did 19 years for, right? But the community came to my aid. When I got bailed out, it was because the community came and said, listen, we'll give him a job, we'll do this, we'll look over him. So they came to my aid and they helped me through. We did fundraisers, you know what I mean? Even though money came up missing, but my mother and father was out there in front of the courthouses picketing and raising money and trying to get me a lawyer to get me out and things of that nature, because we poor. We don't have anything, you know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean? And I lost my mom from all that stress, so I can't forget about this city. Even though I moved out the city, I can't forget about this city, because I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for this city.
Mm-hmm.
This city came to my aid, so it's my job to come to their aid.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? But hopefully I can, overturn my case and prove that I'm innocent, and give my father what he deserves. My father's 81 years old. You know what I
God
mean?
bless.
But if not, hopefully I can save some lives.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? My bad situation hopefully can help better somebody else's situation, so their parents aren't going through what my parents were going through, or
Mm-hmm.
they not going through what I went through.
Mm-hmm.
Because prison is different now than it was when I was there. It was bad when I was there, so imagine today,
Yeah.
36 years later.
Yeah. I still can't believe the fact. I remember my brother called me and told me we outlived the jails. When he heard that they shut down Walpole, they
Yep,
shut down Concord.
yep, yep,
Like,
yep,
wow.
yep, yep. They're closing them down. You know what I mean? But there's still a lot of people going to prison.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of people going to prison, man. A lot of people are going to prison for things they didn't do either. And if they did do it, they're being over sentenced. You know what I mean? And it's people that look like us.
Mm-hmm.
And they're putting us in prison, and they're saying, well, figure it out. Because they put me in prison, they didn't think I was going to figure it out.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? They thought I was just going to sit in there, accept it, and just die in prison, But I refused to give up. I
Mm-hmm.
was like, I'm going to fight. I've been a fighter my whole life, and I'm going to fight until I can't fight no more. And, now that I'm free, no parole, no nothing, people are like, well, why don't you just let it go? Nah, I can't.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? I didn't commit this crime. Like, I have to fight until I can't fight no more.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? It's bigger than me. You know what I'm saying? It's not about me, man. It's about my parents.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? They didn't raise no murderer. They didn't raise no bad kid. You know what I mean? And it's time for me to give them what they deserve. So I gotta keep fighting, and hopefully, I'll find somebody that'll be interested enough to look into my case and realize that, yeah, this kid really didn't do this, and we need to help him. So the struggle begins. Like Nipsey say, the marathon continues.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a marathon.
Yeah.
It's not a race. You know what I mean?
That's one thing that a lot of people don't understand. they want to rush through it
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
think that they're gonna get the
Yeah.
same goal.
Yep. But you know, the big key is that we have to look at ourselves, right? And we have to look inward to figure out, okay, what do I need to do to help me?
Mhm.
Right? And we have to know where we're at in our stages of change. Because some of us is in pre-contemplation where we don't think we need to change nothing. We good where we're at.
Mhm.
And that's when we getting ourselves in trouble, right? Because we leave our house every single day in the search of knowledge to never return. Because you never got it.
Mhm.
Because you can always be better.
Right.
You know what I mean? And that's what we got to continuously do. And we can't get comfortable, because once we get comfortable and we forget about that cell, we forget about standing up for count. We forget about that bad food we had to eat. We forget about them visits, how our parents had to bring bags of change to come visit us so that we can eat, right?
Mhm.
Those bad conditions, the people that you lost, people that died. When we forget, it's easy to go back.
Hmm.
So we can't never forget.
Right.
We got to continuously remember what can happen if we slip, you know? And this is why I do the work that I do, and I stay in the institutions. I rather, like I tell my boss all the time, I'd rather be in an institution working than being at home behind a computer, because I'm in these institutions and my anxiety is high,
Yeah.
right? Because I'm looking and I'm remembering this could be me. I could be back in this situation. Right? Imagine if I commit a crime, what they gonna do to me?
Hmm. Right.
We done let you off and you still out here? You know what I mean?
Now they're
So
never gonna believe that you didn't do it.
you feel me? You know what I
Mhm.
mean? And then I got these kids that's looking at me as an example.
Mhm.
So I gotta be right for them.
Right.
I gotta make sure what I'm teaching them, I'm living. Because if not, I'm just like everybody else. All
Mhm.
those lies told to them, all that trauma they got growing up, I'm going to just add to that, and I
Right.
can't do that. You know,
Mhm.
I owe not just myself, not just the kids, not just my parents, but I owe society this.
Mhm.
You know, because it's about making the world a better place for our children or our grandchildren.
Mhm.
Because right now we're passing the torch to a generation that our children are going to be looking up to, our grandchildren are going to be looking up to.
Mhm.
Imagine that. So,
Now, is there anything else that you want to let the viewers know before we go?
um, you know, I just want you, the viewers, to know that, you know, don't give up.
Mm.
Don't give up. You see the kids that we see out here committing the crimes, doing the things that they're doing, right? They're always left out. The only time they're seen is when they're doing these crimes,
Mm.
right? They need to be seen and heard. So we got to bring them to the table. When all of these things are going on and all of these programs that they're running, and they're talking about gun violence, and they're talking about, you know, making community better, we need to include them.
Mm.
We need to know why they do what they do, why they rather get caught with a gun, why they feel like they got to be in any community with a gun.
Right.
We need to know why they feel this way. So we need to bring them to the table. Not talk to their friends, not talk to their old heads, not talk to them. We need to start talking to them. And we need to bring them to the table,
Mhm.
because their voice is important. And they need to know that they're heard and that they're not invisible. And we need to give them what they're asking for. So we as a community, I get it. We don't get along. There's things that's happened. But we got to learn to be able to put that stuff to the side to come together for the bigger cause, which is these kids.
Right.
And if we can do that, we can make our city better.
Mhm.
And if we can make our city better, our grandchildren can have a better, or our babies can have a better opportunity in the future, because we're not going to live forever.
Right. And whether we want it to happen or not, or we think they're ready or not, these kids are the future. They're going to be the
That's
ones
right.
that's running the country and
That's right.
and doing everything. So we
That's
have
right.
the only thing that we can really do is prepare them for it.
That's right.
Otherwise, if we sit back and watch, it's going to keep falling apart.
That's right. That's right. So, but I appreciate you.
Now, I appreciate you for coming on.
Definitely.
This was an impactful story. So
Definitely.
I think we're going to be able to help a lot of people with this.
God willing.
Now, I hope this episode was able to show you that one bad mistake or one mistake doesn't define your whole life. You're still able to turn it around and become successful, be able to give back and help teach people not to make the same mistake that you did. Now, I'd like to thank my special guest for coming through and sharing his story. Now, my name is Marcus Whitley, and this is Good Behavior. So until the next episode. For more episodes and info, you can find me on all social media at I am Marcus Whitley and find any of my books, Both Sides of the Street, Choices and Consequences, Greatness Under Pressure, and Battling Demons, all on Amazon. Make sure you like and subscribe to the channel.